so focused on cabinet picks and the election, but there's other stuff in the world going on, and I'm normally very good about it, but I realize what the pressy news is and the stuff you guys care about. But I need to start the program with what's happening at COP29 because it is extremely important. COP29 is happening in Azerbaijan. Ironically, it's an oil-rich country, a former Russian republic, Soviet republic, and COP29 is the UN Climate Change Conference. It's happening now. It wraps up in 2 days. And what is great about it is that it's live streamed around the planet and we can see what's happening, and they're not having a normal time. I want to play you some of the audio. Listen to this is one of the participants in the event on stage talking about how they need to censor climate change disinformation.
The climate information ecosystem has been compromised by the relentless onslaught of disinformation campaigns orchestrated and amplified by powerful actors. The impacts of this is that it's obstructed climate action, it's deepened division, it's reduced trust, and it's obstructed progress on climate action. And that can be seen nowhere more clearly than in instances of extreme weather, like floods in Brazil and Spain, hurricanes in the US and in the Caribbean, where we've seen emergency efforts hampered by disinformation efforts. And big tech, legacy media, influential PR firms, and the advertising industry all have played a role within this and often have prioritized profit over truth. But I'm here representing a global coalition that came together before COP26 in 2021, recognizing that there was themes and threats developing, trying to disrupt the negotiations and climate action more broadly. This coalition has now grown to over 60 organizations that are from represented all around the world, organizations in Sri Lanka and Brazil, UK, US, and well, from right across. And since 2021, we've seen, as you said, the IPCC acknowledge the issue of disinformation and its impacts. The EU has recognized this, and now, of course, this initiative as well.
So you got that. We got censorship. They want to use the power of government to censor, and this guy has a network. It is a conscious advertising network. They want people to be conscious of what they're doing. They want to be environmentally conscious. Now, listen, here's the UN climate spokesman. Listen to this. This is from the United Nations.
The initiative from Brazil and UNESCO is very important to us. It's a very important work, especially ahead of COP30 in Belém next year in Brazil, and Brazil is the initiator, to join forces to tackle this major and multi-actor challenge of climate information integrity. We see climate mis- and disinformation increasingly taking over social media spaces. We are seeing more and more content undermining climate action through narratives that frame climate action as elitist and disconnected from public needs. Need to ensure we avoid giving the impression that we are focused on stuff that we just disagree with. Better to say we are focused on things that are actually factually wrong. So UN Climate Change is very pleased and happy that this initiative was launched, and we are part of the steering committee, so we provide advice here. From the process perspective, ensuring integrity of scientific data and facts on climate change is the backbone of this multilateral process and informs the political decision-making in the end. And that's why it is key that information is just and sound. Thank you.
The information that they want to get out information, but not the wrong kind of information, not anything that challenges the norm. And also, you've got this UN climate spokesman saying it is wrong to say that climate action is elitist. And he's saying it from Azerbaijan, where most of them flew in by private aircraft. But it's not elitist. No. It's not elitist. So here's what it is. They want you to believe it's not elitist, even though many of them are on private jets. They want you to believe that the global community must come together and silence anyone who goes against their opinions. But wait, it gets better. This is a American Indian activist who has gone to COP20, a not elite group, to say this.
Jacob Johns. I'm the lead organizer for a Wisdom Keeper delegation. We're an international collective of indigenous wisdom keepers and activists who come together to co-create and advance contemporary climate policy.
Pause. An international collaborative group of wisdom keepers. Is there not something more elitist and pretentious than that? My gosh, you're actually calling yourself a wisdom keeper. So so is he kept in a bucket beside the toilet for people to pick up and talk to when they're taking a dump? Because, I mean, that's where most people keep their wisdom, in the bathroom, and you flip through your books of odd knowledge while you're taking a dump. This guy must actually reside, when he's not on stage, in a basket in someone's bathroom.
Instills indigenous wisdom with a global perspective. I think this is 100% in alignment with what we do. You know, I think that all of our teachings, all of our religions, and all of our faiths have prophesized about a time of turning that we are all faced with now. I mean, we look at the destruction of the planet, we look at the systems that are collapsing, we see the science that is telling us that the end is right here. But as an indigenous person coming from the United States, we have survived genocide, and we still thrive.
You got that? Now, that's the largest point here. Save the best for last. From the wisdom keeper, we've picked him up while we're on the pot and let him speak his wisdom, as we all do when we're in the bathroom, when we're not looking at internet memes, but there is also wisdom. And this young man wants us to know that we all have prophesied this changing climate. It's the end times, and that's the problem. In the 1970s, there was a bombing a week in California from environmental activists. Environmental activists are historically one of the most violent terrorist groups on planet Earth. Not making that up. They don't like to talk about it that way. But environmental activists, even now in the last few years, there have been rail lines that have been sabotaged that were hauling fuel and oil and gas. Environmental activists are violent people. The Earth Liberation Front activists occasionally activate and are murderous people. Y'all, this isn't going to end well, and here's why. You hear this last guy, this wisdom keeper, and they believe the world is coming to an end. Remember, Greta Thunberg years ago said we had less than a decade to get it right. We're approaching the end of the decade to get it right. And to them, we're not getting it right. We're not doing what they want. Just the other day, I played you the audio where they literally want us to give up our meat eating. Not only do they want us to give up our meat eating, they also want us to give up mass agricultural production. In other words, they want us to grow our food in our backyards to save the planet. That's what they want. It's a dangerous, dangerous thing. And what is their eschatology? And by the way, you have to have this discussion. This isn't theology. Eschatology is the theory of the end times, the study of the end times, and you have to understand it. With these people, you will either have heaven or hell on earth because there is no afterlife. And they want a heaven on earth, and they believe that those who are not down with their agenda want a hell on earth. Well, if you are setting yourself up to be the good guy against those who want hell on earth, you got to do everything to stop those people. That's why environmentalists are one of the most violent terrorist groups on planet Earth historically, because they really believe that they are the ones saving the planet. And anyone who's not down with their agenda is destroying the planet, and you must be destroyed so the planet is not destroyed. This UN climate change conference is going to radicalize people. Think about the kids who've had the meltdowns in Congress that, my mommy and daddy say the world is going to end if you don't pass climate change. Think about the kids. They don't die. They go up neurotic and on psychotropic drugs to be able to keep their anxiety at bay because they think the world is coming to an end. Their parents have imposed their psychological abuse on the kids. It's like that Beinert family and their daughter in the New York Times upset that the boys played Minecraft after Donald Trump got elected and took away all the girls' rights. These people are unhinged. And they're going to get violent. You and I were watching the cabinet picks. We're watching the fallout over Matt Gaetz, the Nancy Mace argument about the dude who's decided he's a woman who's going to Congress. And over in Azerbaijan, the environmentalists want governments around the world to actively censor social media, shut down dissident voices on climate, punish anyone who dares breathe heterodoxy to their climate orthodoxy, demand that taxes be placed on meat, shut down mass-scale agricultural farms that feed billions of people. They want mass starvation. They want to die off of the knuckle-draggers. This ends violently. It ends violently because they're not going to change. Donald Trump just got elected president of the United States again. He's going to pull us out of the climate accord from Paris again. And they think that they can align the world against him. They think China's actually going to help them. China's not going to help them. China is a bigger polluter than the United States. And when that reality comes, they're going to realize their utopia is a dystopia, and they're going to become violent. You can't have governmental voices and outside nonprofit groups get together in Azerbaijan and say, we need whole-scale government censorship of dissenting beliefs. We are not the elite, and the world is coming to an end unless we act and not think violence is coming from this. Tyranny is coming from this. It turns out that Donald Trump could be a catalyst to seeing these people lose their minds, and I can't wait to watch, but I'm a little bit fearful about how violent they're going to be. Greta Thunberg's scowl eventually turns to taking some sort of action, and we've seen her in action already. She's a massive anti-Semitic loon.
Want to be on the show?
Hello?
Here, bear with me, those of you on the phones. I got to tell you, Target is leading the retailers of America, warning not to expect a strong holiday shopping season. This is from CNN. The company forecasts Wednesday morning that sales during the final quarter of the year will be flat, and Target lowered its profit forecast. Target also reported a sluggish sales increase of just 0.3% during the latest quarter. Shares of Target plunged 15% during early trading. Target's a bellwether for consumer spending habits and the retail sector as a whole. The holiday shopping season is pivotal for retailers. While Target can survive a weak holiday stretch, many smaller companies depend on strong sales during the holidays to carry them through the following months. Target's struggling because its core middle-class customer base has been strained by higher prices or pulled back on discretionary goods like home decor, electronics, and non-essential clothing in favor of groceries and everyday essentials. Yes, but we were told reliably by CNN that the economy's actually really good. We were told reliably by the New York Times the economy is really good. This again, this from CNN. This is their reporting. Quote, Target is struggling because its core middle-class customer base has been strained by higher prices and pulled back on discretionary goods like home decor, electronics, and non-essential clothing in favor of groceries and everyday essentials. I'm sorry, but we were told the exact opposite of this by members of the media, and we should not allow them to memory hole the fact that this is what they said. Stephanie Rule on MSNBC, you will remember, just after the election, said that it's hard to stand up to the disinformation and misinformation when people think things are bad, but everything's actually good. That's what the data says. The data is now saying that consumers in this country realize things are not good. But the media chose to lecture us instead. The media chose to lecture us and tell us how good it was. But it's not. This is the CEO of Target, Brian Cornell. Quote, consumers tell us their budgets remain stretched and they're shopping carefully as they work to overcome the cumulative impact of multiple years of price inflation. Something that Donald Trump's been saying all year on the campaign trail. Members of the press said he was lying about. Y'all, I want to invite you to go to erickforhillsdale.com and check out a video from Hillsdale College about what they do, what they represent, what they stand for. It's a little abstract for me to tell you about it, but if you go to erickforhillsdale.com, you can see their video. They've been around since the 1800s. They were one of the very first academic institutions in the country to desegregate after the Civil War. Why? Because they believed that every human being created in God's image is unique and special, deserves a superior education, and also needs to understand the genius of our founders, even through their flaws, how special this country is. It's not indoctrination. It's historic education based on fact. They give it to their students, and they open so much of it up to you through things like Imprimis, your free guide into the thinking of the conservative movement. All you have to do is go to erickforhillsdale.com today, see the video, sign up for Imprimis. It is completely free. I have never paid a penny for it. Erick, E-R-I-C-K, erickforhillsdale.com. Begin a relationship with Hillsdale College today. My fellow Americans, this is the segment of the program where I endeavor to make you smarter than all of your friends. You know, it's honestly one of my frustrations. I've got some nut job going after me right now on social media, just insisting because someone said it that he likes, it must be true. There is a plan afoot, a rumor circulated, put it to you this way, on the nomination of Matt Gaetz that the president intends to use the federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1998 to make Matt Gaetz the Attorney General. So I actually, let me just, as a lawyer who actually knows what he's talking about, this guy's like, oh, he wants to, I told him I actually did legal work on Federal Vacancy Reform Act. Back when I was a lawyer, I actually did work on this particular issue. I actually know the law on this particular issue. We never went to court, so he's not going to find the case. He's this nut job is out there, and he found some lawyer whose last name was Erickson, not spelled the same way mine was, and the guy screwed up a case. He's like, you're an incompetent lawyer. Yeah, you're not going to find my Federal Vacancies Reform Act litigation. It was actually a lot of memo writing and research at the time, but it involved a situation with the U.S. attorney situation during the Bush administration. I got to tell you, though, that I do know this area of law, and I understand the recess appointments clause. Not only am I a lawyer and can read this stuff, I have some practical familiarity with the Federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1998. And it's not a path for Matt Gaetz. And I realize that if you have 5 lawyers in a room, you're going to get 5 opinions. And one thing I do want you to note is there are some lawyers, I don't want to name them because I do like them, and this is going to be very insulting to them when I say it, but it's true, and they know it's true. There are some lawyers who are engaging in performative acts of telling Donald Trump what he wants to hear because they would like to return to Donald Trump's orbit. That is just truth. I don't want to name and shame them. I'm not trying to pick fights with friends. But when I see people out there writing memos that actually the Federal Vacancy Reform Act is a path forward for Matt Gaetz to become Attorney General, what they're doing is they are performing in a way to get into Donald Trump's graces and get his attention to get an appointment. They're not actually serious. So there are 2 paths that have been approached by Donald Trump for Matt Gaetz, and here's why. The votes are not there in the United States Senate for Matt Gaetz. Let me hang on one second. The Senate is up in 2026. So let's take the class of 2026 for the United States Senate. Here are the people who are up in 2026. and I'm going to do just Republicans, not Democrats. Tuberville of Alabama, Sullivan of Alaska, Cotton of Arkansas, wow, that one's wrong. They got him listed on there. John Risch of Idaho, Joni Ernst of Iowa, Roger Marshall in Kansas, Mitch McConnell in Kentucky, Bill Cassidy in Louisiana. You got Cindy Hyde Smith in Mississippi, Steve Daines in Montana, Pete Ricketts in Nebraska, Tom Tillis, North Carolina, Mark Wayne Mullen in Oklahoma, Lindsey Graham in South Carolina, Mike Rounds in South Dakota, Bill Haggerty, Tennessee, John Cornyn in Texas, Shelley Moore Caputo in West Virginia, Cynthia Loomis in Wyoming. Those are the incumbent Republicans up for re-election. And I got to tell you, I see Joni Ernst and Mitch McConnell and Bill Cassidy and Tom Tillis and John Cornyn on that list, and I don't know that they will vote for Matt Gaetz. I think they will work very hard. Oh, and Susan Collins as well. Forgot about her. Orchestrate to undermine him. Susan Collins is another one. Lisa Murkowski is not on the ballot in 2026. She does not care. She does not care about Matt Gaetz, and she will not vote for him. Susan Collins, Mitch McConnell. All you need is one more. All you need is one more to say, I'm not going to do it. That's his problem getting through the United States Senate. You got at least 3 people, but more likely, from what I know, based on my own personal conversations with members of the Senate, you got a dozen Republican senators who do not support Matt Gaetz for Attorney General. So Donald Trump really wants him. And by the way, just footnote, this is not 3D chess. And there are a lot of people who always try to, they want to see everything and they want to string the lines together and connect the dots. They're like, he doesn't really want Matt Gaetz. He wants someone more vicious than Matt Gaetz. And so he's offering the Matt Gaetz, and Matt Gaetz is going to go down in flames. And then he's going to get this other guy. It's 3D chess. Galactic brain spiders. Donald Trump wants Matt Gaetz to be his attorney general. He wouldn't have nominated him, and he's not going to spend the political capital on him, except he wants Matt Gaetz. A majority of the United States Senate does not want Matt Gaetz. So Donald Trump has posited 2 ways around the Senate. One is a recess appointment, essentially forcing the House, getting the House to force the Senate into recess so that Donald Trump can use the recess appointments clause of the Constitution. There's a problem with that one. Antonin Scalia, John Roberts, Sam Alito, and Clarence Thomas said you can't do that. A president of the United States cannot do that. Now, Scalia is dead, but he was replaced by who? Neil Gorsuch. Neil Gorsuch is a big Scalia fan. Who else is on the court? Amy Coney Barrett. Amy Coney Barrett was Antonin Scalia's law clerk and widely considered his protege on the United States Supreme Court. Do you really think Amy Coney Barrett is going to author an opinion disagreeing with Antonin Scalia, John Roberts, Sam Alito, and Clarence Thomas? Do you really think Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas are going to now say, oh, well, it's Trump. Never mind. Forget everything we've said about the Constitution. We're going to change our mind. Do you really believe that they're going to blow in the wind like the progressives do? And then, of course, there's Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's new to the court, who's on the left. Do you really think she's going to side with Donald Trump on Matt Gaetz? I think the odds are that the Scalia concurrence in the National Labor Relations Board versus Noel Canning case becomes majority opinion, that presidents of the United States cannot do recess appointments when the Senate is not actually adjourned. The clause in the Constitution means that this is actually what Antonin Scalia wrote about the situation. He said that, let me find the quote. I had it and now it's gone. Doggone it. Antonin Scalia maintained pretty explicitly. Here it is. George Washington and John Adams as attorneys general read the Constitution to restrict recess appointments to vacancies arising during the recess, and there's no evidence that any of the first 4 presidents consciously departed from that reading. The contrary reading was first defended by an executive official in 1823, was vehemently rejected by the Senate in 1863, was vigorously resisted by legislation in place from 1863 until 1940, and is arguably inconsistent with legislation in place from 1940 to the present. The Solicitor General has identified only about 100 appointments that have ever been made under the broader reading, and while it seems likely that a good deal more have been made in the last few decades, There is good reason to doubt that many were made before 1940. I can conceive of no sane constitutional theory under which this evidence of historical practice, which is actually evidence of a long-simmering inter-branch conflict, would require us to defer to the executive branch. You're not going to get Roberts, Alito, and Thomas to walk that back. Now, there are people on social media putting up graphics of all the recess appointments, but they miss a point that must be understood. Presidents can make recess appointments, and many presidents have made recess appointments. George W. Bush made 171 recess appointments in 8 years in office. But for 6 of those years, the judicial or the nominations filibuster existed when Republicans controlled the Senate. So George W. Bush couldn't get a lot of his appointments in place because Democrats balked. So Republicans in the House and the Senate willingly together adjourned for more than 10 days so that Bush could do recess appointments. George Bush never forced the houses of Congress into conflict in order to do a recess appointment. George Bush had the House and Senate agree to recess so he could do these appointments. That's not the case here with Gates. There aren't enough votes to get the Senate Republicans to agree to go into recess so he can do a recess appointment. But not only that, what Scalia said is that regardless of past practice by presidents, if the vacancy existed when the Senate was in session, it can't be filled by recess appointment. That's the gist of what Scalia is saying. So now the other avenue where some cranks have gone is the Federal Vacancies Reform Act of 1998. And I actually have experience in this. Never, thank God, went to court on this issue, but I had plenty of experience, had to research the issue, advise some individuals on it, and here's the basic bottom line. You cannot use the Federal Vacancies Reform Act to put someone in as a recess appointment unless that person was already confirmed by the Senate for another position. The Congressional Research Service does a very, very good job of advising members of Congress on issues. And let me just read you their synopsis. It's very easy to understand. The Vacancies Act limits a government employee's ability to serve as an acting officer in 2 primary ways. First, the Vacancy Act provides that only 3 classes of people may serve temporarily in a position that is an advice and consent position. Alternatively, the president may direct either a senior official of the agency or a person serving in another advice and consent position to serve as the acting officer. Second, the Vacancies Act limits the length of time a person may serve as an acting officer. A person may either serve during a limited period from the date of vacancy or during the president's pendency of a nomination of that office with some extensions. But there are some limits. The Vacancies Act has largely been interpreted to govern the ability of a person to perform only those functions and duties of an office that are non-delegable. All of this is to say, if Donald Trump wants to use the Federal Vacancies Reform Act to put Matt Gaetz in as Attorney General, he first needs to find somewhere else to put Matt Gaetz that can allow him to withstand the advice and consent rule of the Senate, get him into the executive branch somewhere else, and then move him over to the spot of Attorney General. He could do that except, and this is the big issue here, there is court precedent that says the president isn't supposed to do in-runs like that. That's defying the Federal Vacancies Reform Act. That's defying the intent of the law. So he'd be on dubious legal ground. Now, here's the other thing. Let's say the president uses the Federal Vacancies Reform Act to put Matt Gaetz in as Attorney General. And then a court says he can't be there. This is the thing that everybody's missing here. If a court, and the odds are like 99% that a court would say he can't be there if they did this process as they're discussing it. Every action that Matt Gaetz did as Attorney General would be null and void. Any prosecution he brings against the left would get thrown out. Anything he did as Attorney General would go out the door. Any prosecution, anything that had the authorization of the Attorney General would be rendered null and void. So, one, it's not worth it, and two, it's probably not possible. Now, I realize, again, there are lawyers who tell you that it is, but I mean, the key understanding here is that the very basic foundational premise of the Federal Vacancies Reform Act is that if you want to move someone into another advice and consent position within the executive branch without going back through the Senate, that person who you move into the position must also have been an advice and consent person. And there's a lot of case law on this, well, including involving Mick Mulvaney from the first term of the Trump office. A number of people from the Biden administration and from the Obama administration all ran into this problem. All I'm telling you is that if Matt Gaetz does not get confirmed by the United States Senate, it's going to be virtually impossible for Donald Trump to in any meaningful way make him Attorney General. And the amount of people out there online who are assuring all of you that actually it's very simple, here's what he can do, have no understanding of the law and no understanding of court cases that have involved these sorts of recess appointments. And all I'm begging everyone to do is just be smart about it. Yes, there are lawyers who will say it, but keep in mind those lawyers are performing to get back into the good graces of Donald Trump. They're not actually serious. That's part of the problem here is everybody has an opinion. But I'm telling you, I actually have familiarity with this area of the law. I know how this works. And the bottom line is every idea that's being floated out there defies either court precedent or the plain text of the law. Now, let me tell you about Americans for Prosperity, because they'd love to have you on their team. They're the largest leading grassroots group in the country. They happen to be on the right, and they knocked on millions of doors in Georgia, millions of doors in Pennsylvania, millions of doors in Ohio, millions of doors in North Carolina, millions of doors in the swing states. With their army of activists, they taught people how to go door to door in an organized method to find persuadable voters and get them to participate in the democratic process. And it worked marvelously, and it really, really helped our side. Not only that, Americans for Prosperity advocates for common sense conservative solutions around the country in local government and state government. They give you all of the information you need to be the most informed member of your circle of friends so you can go advocate for common sense conservative reform in the country. If you'd love to be part of them, they'd love to have you. Go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today. Sign up with AFP. They not only make you really informed, but they train you, they teach you how to excel at arguing for conservative reform in government or just to keep your friends informed. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Hello, America. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number, 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, if you're just joining us nationally, I know a number of my Georgia affiliates have broken away here. Jose Ibarra has been found guilty of murdering Laken Riley. The sentencing is going on now. They're taking statements from family and friends of Laken Riley before engaging in his sentencing. Jose Ibarra, turns out, is one of the Venezuelan gang members who had been let into this country by the Biden administration. And if you're a longtime listener to this program, you know when that happened, I said there was no way Joe Biden was going to win Georgia. And I do think that was a moment where Georgia was off the table for the economy to begin with. But that was there is just no way to change that dynamic once this happened, because it was Joe Biden's policies that allowed this man into the country so that he could get close to and murder Laken Riley. Just an awful, awful situation. And we will find out what the sentencing is here shortly. It took 15 minutes for the judge to arrive at the verdict. It was a bench trial, not a jury trial. I think the defense did not want to go through having a jury of Clark County residents. The case was so polarizing. And we'll find out the sentencing. Now, I want to move on to a matter that divides us and it divides basically normal people from the crazies. And I do think it's normal people from the crazies, and I'm going to put it that way, and I'm also going to note that a lot of members of the media themselves are the crazy ones. That's the issue of Tim McBride, who has legally, and so I want to explain that to you. My rule of thumb is that if someone legally changes their name, I will embrace their new name, but Tim McBride changed his name to Sarah McBride, and he is now a congressman-elect from Delaware. Sarah McBride is a trans activist, and Nancy Mace has come out and said, I don't want a man in the bathroom with me. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, a short time ago, released the following statement. All single-sex facilities in the Capitol and House office buildings, such as restrooms, changing rooms, and locker rooms, are reserved for individuals of that biological sex. It is important to note that each member office has its own private restroom, and unisex restrooms are available throughout the Capitol. Women deserve women's-only spaces. Buddy of mine does point out the irony. If you're unfamiliar with Nancy Mace's history, Nancy Mace was the first woman to graduate from the Citadel. She fought the law. She won. She got to graduate from the Citadel. And a buddy of mine says it is kind of ironic Nancy Mace is fighting for this when she invaded a male-only space and insisted that she could, and now she's saying men can't invade women's spaces. There is some irony there. It is worth noting, but also there's a difference. The difference is men and women are allowed into the military. The Citadel is a military academy, and Nancy Mace fought and won that. What I find notable in this particular issue is that now men have decided they want to become women, and I honestly believe this. It's not just a funny line. It's something Dave Chappelle has said in some of his stand-up, but I think it is true. If it were not white men who were the first trendsetters in this, none of us would take it seriously. But white men and then white women, overwhelmingly and disproportionately, this is a phenomenon of white progressives. Yes, it is absolutely true. There are black and Asian trans people and activists, but none of us in the entire planet would pay much attention to it but for the fact that it is white people who insist that they get to up in biology and the English language together, and we're all forced to pay attention to it. And this is my point. And I want you to hear me out on this, please. Hear me out on this. Because, at the bottom line, it's a simple thing. Are you man or woman? How did God make you? And it is wild to me that we were for a very long time told that people were born gay or straight. And if you're born gay, no, we should not convert you. And now we're told with the trans community that they're not born the way they were meant to be, and we must move heaven and earth to convert them. And they want to be on the rainbow flag with everybody else, even though they're diametrically different. They're not born that way. They're born a different way and then use surgeries and drugs to conform themselves. It is a mental issue. But I want everybody to hear where I stand very clearly on this issue. I don't believe men can become women. I don't believe women can become men. I think that flies in the face of basic biology. Yes, there are people who are born with extra chromosomes. There are people who are born with abnormalities, but even people who are intersex lean one way or the other based on their first two chromosomes, XX or XY. XY is male, XX is female. That is basic biology. It transcends people to every animal on the planet. There are certain animals, fish and others, that can change their sex, but we are not fish. We are Homo sapiens. We are in a class of animal called the mammals. And among mammals, there are none that get to change their sex. It is extremely narcissistic. It is a mental manifestation of extreme narcissism that one can change one's body to something else and then impose their will on everyone else to make you conform with language and belief. We've been lectured forever that we're not to impose our beliefs on anybody else, and yet here comes the trans community imposing their beliefs on everybody else, and we're supposed to go along with it. You can't say pregnant woman in the press anymore. You got to say pregnant person. It's the AP style guide. Why? Because the trans community said so. You can't say breastfeeding anymore. It's got to be chest feeding. Why? Because the trans community says so. They're imposing their will on the English language, on science, and on people. But also, Y'all, if you are willing to go through extraordinary surgeries and drug therapy treatments because your brain tells you you're meant to be the opposite sex, and your therapy, the thing that is easier for you to do is not to get your mind to change itself, but to get your body to change itself to conform to your mind, you're really going through something. And I think all of us should be empathetic to someone whose brain tells them this isn't right. What I find extraordinary is that the therapeutic community would rather than pay lots of money to physically alter their body than to pay for therapy to see if they can get their brain sorted out. But they're going through something, and we should be empathetic to that. Y'all, if you're willing to chop off your male reproductive organs or cut out your female reproductive organs and have added to you the cosmetic appearance of a male reproductive organ, you're willing to cut your breast off. My wife went through a double mastectomy after we got married. It was not an easy surgery. You're clearly going through something. But that doesn't mean, though, we should be empathetic to you, that we should agree with your change. There's no halfway point here, and that's the frustration. There's no halfway point here. You know, there used to be a time when men would dress up as women and we'd give them a raised eyebrow, make a J. Edgar Hoover reference, and move on. But nope, not anymore. If we're not willing to accept that this woman with this massive Adam's apple is a woman, well, then we're a bigot. We can't say they're suffering mental illness. We have to say we're a bigot, apparently. There's no middle ground here. We can't just politely move on. Listen, I guarantee you, if trans activists were not out there waving their pastel-colored flags saying, we're here, we're trans, get used to it, and they just paid for really good surgery to make him look like her or her look like him and went through all sorts of testosterone or estrogen therapy, and they just didn't tell anybody, you'd never know. And everybody could move on in ignorance. But they want us to be hyper aware of it. And not only that, we get in trouble if we use the wrong pronoun. You know, I got to go through nonsensical training for my company. And it's only a matter of time before we start getting lectured, and many in the Fortune 500 are already being lectured. If you disrespect someone by using the wrong pronoun, you're in trouble. Why? Why am I in trouble? They're not a woman. Sarah McBride is not a woman. It is disrespectful for you to force me to give up the English language that I have learned, that men use he, him pronouns. It is disrespectful of you to force me to give up basic biology, all because this person has a mental health issue. And we're supposed to like bend over backwards to accommodate this person. Why am I not accommodated? Why are you not accommodated? Progressives have lectured us forever on not imposing our values on others, and now here comes the trans community, and they will be damned if you're going to call them by their proper pronouns. Nancy Mace is right. Sarah McBride should be accommodated if possible with a unisex bathroom, but the trans before woman definitionally means Sarah McBride is not a woman. The rest of us should not be forced to abandon our values, our convictions. We should not be forced to abandon basic biology. As much as you get these PhDs in feminist studies telling us that actually biology says, no, the hell it does not. Biology does not, and don't expert credential me. I am common sense. I read biology textbooks. I have a degree, a post-grad degree in the law. I did very well in biology in college, and the chromosomes XX and XY determine whether it's male or female. And even in the intersex community of people who are born with both, there is a predominating list of directions for male or direction or female. I had a cousin who was intersex. Stop telling me your lie is real. This is a campaign in gaslighting. And the fact that you have to put trans before the word tells me everything I need to know. That word trans before woman means definitionally the person's not a woman. So you know what's going to happen. We're going to get to the point where even using the word trans is verboten by the press because the man must become woman, despite biological impossibility. I'm sorry, but it's a bridge too far for me for science. It is a bridge too far for me for the English language. It is a bridge too far for me in faith. It is a combination of faith and science and the English language, and I'm just not going down that path. Sarah McBride is a member of Congress created in the image of God who deserves our respect as a human being, but Sarah McBride should respect us enough to not make us give up our beliefs to validate his mental health issues, and that he can't do that and the trans community can't do that. That's on them. It's not on you and me, no matter how much they scream and hate us. The Jaguar rebranding. This is a video, and I realize those of you who are listening to this radio show can't see the video, but I'm going to talk over this. This is kind of a wild, at using lots of bright colors. You've got the Jaguar logo has changed. Now you've got these sexually androgynous people wearing, it's like the Teletubbies grew up to become serial killers is what it looks like. Some old dude painting some dude with a sledgehammer and a dress saying break molds, and then they all sit down on a rock and copy nothing. That is what it's a very weird, change the logo. Now, interestingly enough, in Middle Eastern countries, they've cut out this part of the very androgynous dude with the sledgehammer saying break molds. It is a very clear embrace of progressive, woke, transgender sensibilities. These androgynous people in like ballet, weird ballet sort of outfits. It's very, very odd. Well, it turns out that Jaguar is now explaining they've already revealed the vehicle, but it's embargoed until December 3rd. Members of the press who in the auto industry who went to the event are allowed to write about it now without talking about the car, and they're all saying it's very weird. It makes no sense. It's like one of those perfume commercials that you're like, how on earth did they come up with this eau de poop? Turns out that they're going all electric, and their prices are going to be double what they were. So an all-electric vehicle, twice as expensive. This ad campaign is designed for white, woke, progressive, wealthy people who now can't support Tesla because Elon Musk turns out to be a Trump supporter. That's what it is. In that light, the ad campaign is perfect. It actually is a brilliant ad campaign. We were all kind of befuddled by it, like, what the hell is this? Well, when you realize it's going to be targeting white, woke progressives who now won't buy Teslas, it's the perfect ad campaign. A bunch of androgynous betas pretending to be something in unisex leotard ballet costumes. This is exactly the market. And when you look at it and it looks insane, yes, rich, insane white people is the target demographic now for the Jaguar. It makes perfect sense. I mean, they probably hired the Bud Light people to come up with it. It was perfect. They know their audience, insane white rich people who won't buy Teslas. Now, I got to tell you about Vision Computers because you should buy a Vision computer. Vision Computers, the holiday season's coming up. If you need a new computer, they're going to build a computer for you. They're going to save you some money, and you're going to get their 5-star support. They've got over 4,500 5-star reviews for their support, and their computers. They're the perfect people to use for the holiday season if you need a computer. Not only that, if you're a business, you can get their tech support. Even if you don't buy a computer from Vision, for yourself or your office, you can get their tech support for just $179 a year, and it's going to be great. You're not going to have to go through the chain of press 1 for this and 2 for this and habla español this. You call the number and someone answers, and they give you they can even roll your email over to your new computer. They can even help you with your printer support. 404-COMPUTE is the number to call them. 404-COMPUTE. You're worried about a new computer because all your stuff, including emails, are on the old one. They can make it easy for you. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Tell them I sent you. You'll save even more money. visioncomputers.com. I'm happy to have you be with me. I got to move us to some other issues, but first I got a lot of requests yesterday, and I mentioned my wife has decided she wants a dog. And first, I need you guys to know, and people think I'm joking about this. I'm not. I have convinced my wife not to get a pet raccoon. My wife is obsessed with raccoons, and I want you to know that if you ever see Jake Tapper on CNN do a story about a raccoon attack, it is his effort on my behalf to discourage my wife from raccoons. My wife wants a pet raccoon badly. Apparently, when she was little, some guy in her town had a pet raccoon, and she has wanted one forever. And I keep telling her they will claw your face off, and she does not believe me. She wants a raccoon. And some of you people have been encouraging her. Karen Tumulty from the Washington Post helpfully pointed out that Calvin Coolidge, who is my favorite president, his wife had a pet raccoon named Rebecca, and if it was good enough for the White House, it should be good enough for my house. And I have had to block Karen Tumulty on social media for trying to antagonize me about my wife having a pet raccoon. It apparently is a thing some of you want my wife to have. There is no way in hell we're having a raccoon in my house. We're not doing it. I had to lay down the law as the man of the house, God ordained, first created member, head of the household, no raccoons. So we compromised. We're getting a new dog. Now, I just bought my son a piano. A Kawai piano. It is their top of the line upright. It is a very expensive piano. We used a company. We had lots of recommendations for different companies to go to. There's a company we went to in Atlanta, England Piano, that sells Kawai pianos. They have one in stock, and they'll be delivering it to our home. And it's my son fell in love with this piano, and they're like, you can finance this thing over several years, and if you pay for it within the first 24 months, there's no interest. It's like, I'm getting a great interest rate right now on some of my savings, so I can just buy before the interest-free period's up, we'll have the piano paid off. Then my wife was like, you know what? I think I want a dog. We put our golden doodle down 2 weeks ago. Now, I got to say something here, and I don't mean this to be pretentious, but I've had people ask. Many members of my audience seem very emotionally invested in this. No, we're not doing a rescue dog. And I mean no disrespect to any of you who are doing rescue dogs. Shut up, Joe. Shut up. Shut your mouth. Just stop texting me and shut your mouth. One of my program directors wants me to know that Teddy Roosevelt had a hyena and a badger. We should consider them. No. And no raccoon. Y'all, I am very allergic to dogs. And I love dogs. Dogs are very sweet, and we tried 2 rescue dogs. The first rescue dog bit my wife as it herded my children into the corner. And the second rescue dog we had for quite a few months until the dog decided that I was the alpha, she was the beta, and my wife was somewhere near the end of the Greek alphabet. And the dog ate all the chocolate candy for Easter and then ran around the house diarrheaing on the carpet and would run up to my wife, sit in front of her, have diarrhea, and then expect my wife to clean it up. And when I came home from a business trip shortly thereafter, the dog was living in the backyard on a chain, and this is not something my wife ever wanted for a dog. And she explained to me that the dog believed my wife was an inferior species of animal, had diarrhea in front of my wife, would expect her to clean it up and nip at her if she didn't move fast enough. And that was the end of our rescue experiment. So we waited, And we found a breeder of golden doodles outside of Athens, Georgia. We went. My wife was very insistent she wanted a boy dog. Very insistent she wanted a boy. And was relieved with this litter of golden doodles. So we had by the way, let me give you some great advice. This is advice. My wife hired a trainer to train us on how to pick out the dog. And it is the best piece of animal-friendly advice you're ever going to get. Do not, and I need to preface this and say, I've told this so many times now, and so many people have emailed and said, oh, well, that explains our dog. Do not, if you go pick out a dog from a litter of puppies, do not get the first one that comes to you. Don't do it. Do not do it. That is not your dog. Everybody think, oh, he chose us. Yes, because he thinks you're easily manipulated. That is why you get the dog that came up to you first, and that dog runs roughshod over you the rest of their lives. It's true. Every single person who the puppy comes up to them, that's the rambunctious one. And they're like, this dog is hard to handle. Yes, because you're a sucker. The dog could pick out a sucker and picked out a sucker in you. And now the dog runs your life. You don't run the dog's life. I told this story to a friend of mine who had a very similar experience. And he was like, but the dog picked us. The dog came up and their dog is rambunctious and eats the furniture and everything. Yes, because you're a sucker and the dog knew it. That's what the trainer told us. So we went in. My wife was so excited. The very first dog that came over was a little female puppy because my wife was desperate for the male. And she was so relieved. I mean, you could visibly see in her face. She was so excited. The boy puppy was not the first one to come up. The second one to come up was the boy puppy who bit the hell out of the first puppy and then tried to climb up my wife's leg. And the look on her face, she's like, I guess we're not getting the boy. So my wife sat down and all these puppies were climbing all over except for one. The one was curled up in the corner, sound asleep. When all the other dogs left my wife, the one that was in the corner asleep woke up, climbed into my wife's lap, went back to sleep, and that was Maggie. And we had Maggie for 9 years until we put her down a week ago because she was eaten up with cancer. And until the very end, Maggie wanted nothing more than to make sure we were all happy. It was very heartbreaking to have to sit in there, and my wife held Maggie in her lap while they put her down. And I held my wife. My wife was in my lap, the dog was in my wife's lap, and we let Maggie go. And my wife has been very just emotionless for the last 2 weeks now. And finally, 2 days ago said, I think I need a dog. I don't need to be in the house alone thinking about cancer and everything else. So we decided it was time to get a dog. Now, a lot of people have asked where we found this dog. So we decided we didn't want to get another golden doodle. We have to have a doodle because I am so allergic to dogs. Y'all, it was so bad. Y'all, just laugh with me here. We go to put our dog down last Tuesday, and I'm in the room with our dog where many other dogs have been throughout the day, and I can't breathe. And my throat is just scratchy and swollen. My nose has gone completely shut, and I'm sitting in there trying not to scratch. And it's all I can think is we've got to, if we can't get our dog put down soon, I'm the one who's going to get put down. It was horrible. I'm so allergic. I'm not allergic to cats. I've never been allergic to cats. I am allergic to dogs. And I love dogs, and I will pet your dog. I'll play with your dog. And then you got to understand I got to go home and eat a bottle of Benadryl. So we got to do a doodle for me to survive and to be able to do radio with a voice. But there's a group in South Alabama. In fact, I'm on the radio in their area. You can see my tower, my radio tower from my affiliate down in South Alabama. I am down in WJNZ. Y'all are listening to me right now in Robertsdale, Alabama, and that is where this family is. It is Teddy Bear Golden Doodles is the website. Smuraglia in South Alabama, in Robertsdale, Alabama. And they have something called it's a Schnauzer doodle mix called a schnoodle. Never even heard of it. My wife found it. She's like, here's the problem. if we get another golden doodle, the odds of them looking like our dog Maggie, and that's all my wife is going to think about, and she doesn't want to think about it, and she wanted something that's a little bigger. So it's a schnoodle. It is a schnauzer poodle mix. They are considered even more hypoallergenic than a golden doodle, and so that's what we're going to do. They may be a little more stubborn and rambunctious, but my wife spent a lot of time on the phone with a very nice lady down in South Alabama explaining, look, I need a dog that's going to sit on the couch with me and curl up and sleep when I sleep and nap when I nap. But when we want to go to our kids' school, is not going to be trying to climb out the car door to bite kids. And so we're going to do this. Now, here's the punchline. I told you I bought the piano. The piano is very expensive. My wife was like, listen, I know the piano's expensive, and getting this dog is going to be expensive. But they don't have any litters available until next year. So we'll be able to get the piano, save some money, get the dog. She calls a very nice lady in South Alabama yesterday. Lady says, as a matter of fact, we got a litter that's not online yet, and they'll be available the beginning of January. It's like, oh my gosh. All of this is to say, I need a winning lottery ticket to be able to afford everything. Bo, my financial guy, if you're listening right now, I'm not doing all the saving of money that you expected me to do. Between needing the new air conditioner, the piano, and the golden doodle, I need another job to be able to afford my family at this point. None of you care about this, I realize, and I was not going to talk about this. But suddenly it hit me. People asked yesterday, what is this sort of dog you're getting? That is the dog. It is not a raccoon. It is a dog. It is a mix between a schnauzer, a schnoodle, which is a schnauzer doodle mix, and a poodle. So it's apparently very hypoallergenic. It's got a great temperament, and they get to be giant dogs. My wife wants a mastiff, if I'm honest. My wife wants a 200-pound giant dog, and I had convinced her, you go to an Airbnb or a hotel, they're not going to let you have a massive dog. So we need something around 50 pounds. That's like the cutoff limit for hotels and Airbnbs if they're pet friendly. And we need something that's just going to lay around the house and not shed because I want to be able to breathe. And there's no such thing as a mastiff schmashtadoodle. So you're not going to get a giant, curly, hypoallergenic mastiff that eats the neighbors. You got to go with a doodle mix. My wife is suddenly smiling again. It was gut-wrenching to do what we had to do. And I have had so many friends reach out who are at the same point in their lives that it is time for them to come to grips with the fact their dog's not getting any better. And it is gut-wrenching. It is the second hardest thing in life I had to do after telling my wife she was going to die. We are moving on, though, thankfully, to a new dog. I'll keep you updated. Now, this is the problem. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot say this to my family. If you know my family, I'm letting you in on a secret. You're not allowed to report back to my family and say I said this. Here is my one anxiety about a new dog. Historically, my family settles on the dumbest names for animals. And I will not call my animal a stupid name. And if I have to have a separate name for this dog, I suggested to my wife that since Maggie is short for Magnolia, we should go with Noli for this dog. It fell flat with the family. And I'm like, my family are a group of people who come up with the dumbest names for dogs, and I get a veto. If I'm spending the money, I'm getting a veto on the name for this dog because I will be darned if it's going to be a stupid name for a dog. And already the suggestions coming forward, I'm like, no, absolutely not, no. So pray for me and my family that we settle on a name for a dog. And now I really should not need to take this much time on the story, but y'all, I'm tired of talking about the cabinet picks. And I got to talk about China, and I don't want to, so let me move on to things that actually matter and tell you about this secret war on cash that Swiss America's been warning everybody about, because it actually does matter. I got the report from, y'all know my pitch here. The trusted leader, precious metals, 40 years, rated A+ by the Better Business Bureau. This is the thing that's wild to me, and I didn't start paying attention to it until I read this report from them. It takes less than 15 minutes to read. If you pull out currency, like I realize there are counterfeiting measures on currency. I did not realize so much of what the government does is designed to bypass the anonymity of cash purchases so that your purchases in cash are no longer anonymized. They can track it. It's kind of wild to see what the government does. Likewise, with cryptocurrency, it's not as private as you think. It's very eye-opening report from Swiss America. It can save you in your retirement and finances, and it can also help you with your private purchases. All you have to do to get this report is call or text my name, Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 800-289-2646. See, all that war on cash, it does include digital forms of currency. It's spreading. Read the Secret War on Cash report. It's free, completely free from Swiss America. Just mention my name, Erick, when you call or text 800-289-2646. That's 800-289-2646. 800-289-2646. Message and data rates may apply. Some more breaking news for you. Jose Ibarra has been sentenced to life without parole, not getting the death penalty. The judge in Athens, Clark County, Georgia, says we'll just be paying for him for the rest of his life. Life without parole. This is the murder of Laken Riley over in Athens, Georgia. It took the judge 15 minutes to render his verdict. And then after the sentencing period of listening to statements from the family and friends of Laken Riley, sentenced him, Jose Ibarra, to life in prison. I am learning something about you guys. There are a lot of you who want pet raccoons. It's not just my wife. My gosh, a whole lot of people want pet raccoons. All right. We gotta turn to serious stuff because there actually is, and I do want to talk about the single cat ladies when we come back because there's some interesting data out there you probably haven't heard. But first, this is super disturbing. Anyone can buy data tracking U.S. soldiers and spies and tie them to nuclear vaults and even to brothels in Germany, among other things. This is a wild, wild story. It is at Wired magazine, and essentially our soldiers, sailors, and airmen can be tracked based on their cell phone data and metrics. And it's kind of creepy just how much data they can get. More than 3 billion phone coordinates collected by a U.S. data broker expose the detailed movements of U.S. military and intelligence workers in Germany, and the Pentagon can't stop it. Nearly every weekday morning, a device leaves a two-story home near Wiesbaden, Germany, and makes a 15-minute commute. Around 7 a.m., it arrives at Lucius Clay Kaserne, the U.S. Army European headquarters. You can track it to lunch. You can track it to where they live. You know who they are, and it turns out to be a senior-ranking military official, and it's very easy to do. Insane. We'll spend some more time on this in the next hour. First, I got to tell you, Omaha Steaks is back for the holiday season, and they would love to have you. You know, I've been given Omaha Steaks since I was in law school, or college, rather. I needed to impress employers with professional gifts. Steak is a great gift. With the holidays coming up, Omaha Steaks wants to make it even affordable. They understand the economic situation we're in, so here's the deal. If you go to omahasteaks.com today, you use Erick as your promo code at checkout, and you're going to save $30, minimum order required, and you can get a $30 credit for future order as well. You go to omahasteaks.com. In fact, if you put Erick in the search bar, you can get an incredible package. I'm going to do this for you. Omaha Steaks, OMAHA steaks.com. You'll see the search bar at the top of the site. You put in ERICK and press return, and you can see the festive gift with free burgers, butcher cut top sirloins, chicken breast, gourmet jumbo franks, caramel apple tartlets. My wife loves the Omaha Steak seasoning. You can upgrade it at checkout. Use Erick, ERICK, as your promo code for an extra $30 off at omahasteaks.com. Check them out today. Conversationalists, welcome. It's Erick Erickson here across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, I would be happy to have you. I want to turn our attention, before we get back to the military and China to single cat ladies. It was something of a pejorative used on the campaign trail by J.D. Vance, and there was a lot of outrage. And at the time I said it was not necessarily something that we needed to point out, much like Kamala Harris being detached from the black community. It was just something people kind of understood. So step back for a minute and let's take Kamala Harris and the black community. In the South, where I am, if you talk to a lot of black women or black men, and you got onto the subject of politics, they may not like Donald Trump, but if you had a relationship with these people, inevitably what would come up is that Kamala Harris did not have the quote-unquote black experience. Now, that's not me saying that. I'm just relating to you conversations of black Americans. You go to South Carolina, go to Georgia, go to North Carolina. You talk to black women, go up to Michigan, talk to black women in Detroit. Kamala Harris grew up in Canada and then in Berkeley, California. Her parents were upper income. Her father descended from slave owners in Jamaica. Her mother's an Indian immigrant. She did not have the experience of a black woman in this country. She just didn't. And they knew it. And if you or I or Donald Trump were to talk about this, they'd get defensive of Kamala Harris. Because it was a conversation, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you want to say it or not, there are things you and I both understand that some people can say and other people can't, or at least are supposed to. Like, for example, the N-word, you and I are not going to say it. It's just, it is a matter of historic racial issues in this country. And so a black woman in this country can say it, but if Donald Trump goes on the campaign trail and starts talking about it, people are going black women are going to get defensive of Kamala Harris. It's going to be one of those things they can say, you can't say. And it's very similar to single cat ladies, although we all know them because single cat ladies, particularly the white ones, are the loudest, most obnoxious people on social media, and they're the ones who want to talk to the pollsters. I am firmly convinced, Ann Selzer, the pollster, it was not a hit job, and I know because someone you like said it, you believe it, that it was a hit job designed to suppress the Trump vote. It's not it at all. Ann Selzer just uses a polling methodology that's increasingly outdated, and she retired. It's a shame because she actually is one of the best pollsters in the country and one of the most intellectually honest pollsters in the country, and her last poll was a very bad poll. She had already said she was going to retire. One of the rumor mills is that she was pushed to retire because of the poll. She was already going to retire. Wasn't commonly known, but it was known among the polling community. This was it. And she went down in flames with that last poll. The reason she went down with flames that last poll is because the single cat ladies are the ones who are most likely to want to talk to the pollster. See, this is the thing. This is how you kind of had a sense that Kamala Harris was probably not doing well, is because Democrats started positing a theory that there's a secret Kamala Harris voter out there. It used to be that there was a secret Trump voter, but now it's a secret Harris voter. No, the hell there's not. I'm sorry. Every single person I know who supported Kamala Harris was loud and proud about it. I pass by a house when I leave my office in Middle Georgia every day to go home. There's a house, it's a little Tudor-style house on a triangular-shaped lot across from our federal building. And they had Harris signs hanging off. So let me paint this picture for you. It's kind of like a rampart almost. You go past, and it is a triangular-shaped wall that's elevated with a garden at the top. And they put posts out so that they were perpendicular to the way you were driving, and you could see them head on. Harris walls. They had like 5 or 6 signs on each side. And underneath they said, obviously. As if who except the troglodytes could vote for Donald Trump. And that's the thing, is that so many of the Harris Walsh voters were so smug about it, It's impossible to have ever believed there was a secret Harris voter. The Harris voters were the most obnoxious and bullying voters out there. Like, y'all, I'll be real honest with you. I stopped going to church the last week or so before the election just because I knew it was going to be constantly, what do you think about the election? What do you think about the election? I'm not here to talk about the election. And so if I went into church, and I did, I'd go into church and I would go in through a different door and I would sit down right before worship service began, but just trying to wade through. And it's not meaning disrespect anybody. It's just state of my life. Right around the election time, I stay away from grocery stores and places because everybody wants to talk about the election, and I'm so over the election. I never went anywhere where I didn't encounter someone who was voting for Kamala Harris, except church, thank God. But everywhere I went, with the exception of church, I always ran into someone who was going to vote for Kamala Harris, and they needed me to know they were voting for Kamala Harris. I don't need to know who you're voting for. I don't care who you're voting for. Yeah, I love you. I don't care. But I wish you wouldn't vote for it. But nonetheless, I don't really care. But there's no such thing as a secret Harris voter. And that's the thing with the single cat ladies. They're the loudest people out there, the most brazen people. My buddy Con Carroll. Con Carroll is a great guy. He's worked for Mike Lee. He writes at the Washington Examiner. He's got a new book out, Sex and the Citizen, How the Assault on Marriage is Destroying Democracy. And the single cat lady phenomenon is actually one of the perfect encapsulations of this data. Let me give you the data. Married women, majority of married women, we now have the final exit polling from Edison Research. 60% of married men voted for Donald Trump. 51% of married women voted for Donald Trump. 49% of unmarried men voted for Donald Trump, 47% for Harris. But 59% of unmarried women voted for Kamala Harris. Unmarried men actually have swung towards the Republicans by about 20 percentage points. I think it's very funny. Planned Parenthood says that since the election, their percentage of requests for vasectomies have skyrocketed like 400%. There are a lot of unmarried and some married men who are getting vasectomies. They don't want to have kids. Unmarried women are increasingly ensuring they'll never have kids. And unmarried women are the most hysterical in this country. I can't emphasize this enough to you, that married people in this country overall have better mental health. In fact, married Christians in America, and I specifically say Christians because Muslim, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu, atheist, doesn't matter. A married evangelical Bible-believing Christian, that is someone who is a regular churchgoer who believes that the Bible is the inerrant word of God. That is just, so we're dealing with definitions here so you understand it. A Bible-believing evangelical, someone who regularly goes to church, who believes the Bible is the inerrant word of God, not inspired, but actually is the inerrant word of God, that person, if married, has better mental health than any other group on the planet. Better mental health than Jews, better mental health than Muslims, better mental health than Hindus, better mental health than Zoroastrians, better mental health than secular atheists. Married Christians in this country who regularly go to church and believe the Bible are the happiest people with the best mental health. That's not in dispute, and I need you to understand. It's something that comes up a lot on TV or radio, but it's not even disputable. That is the data. I'm not making that up. And it's not a coincidence that single childless cat women, or dog women for that matter, single childless women, are the most neurotic, most worried, and most fretful. Who's going to take care of them? Well, I guess I'm going to take care of myself. And now I got to take care of my cat. And they're not happy people. They are not happy people. Con Carroll, in his book Sex and the Citizen, How the Assault on Marriage is Destroying Democracy, writes in the Washington Examiner today, there's a lifestyle revolution going on in affluent liberal circles, including open marriage, polyamory, and other alternatives to monogamy that weaken the commitment of couples and undermine family bonds. And it's the Democrats that are most open to these alternate lifestyles. According to the National Opinion Research Center, less than half of college-educated Democrats agree that sex with someone other than one's spouse is always wrong, while more than 80% of Republicans believe that it is. The vast majority of Democrats may believe that marriage is just a personal choice that doesn't affect other people. 73% told the Pew Research Center that unmarried couples do just as good a job at raising children as married couples. But decades of data show they're wrong. Children from unmarried households are less likely to finish high school, more likely to get in trouble with the law, are less likely to be employed than those from married households. Married spouses benefit from marriage. Married women are healthier, happier, and wealthier than their unmarried counterparts. The positive effects of marriage are even stronger for men who live longer on average than those who are single. And this is the wild, crazy part of all the data. If you're married, take the faith component out of it for a minute. But if you're married, you have higher income, your family's more stable, your children succeed better in life, you tend to be healthier, live longer, and are happier. Add the faith component to it. Among married couples who are happier, wealthier, healthier, and live the longest, it's people who take their faith seriously, particularly regular Christian church-going evangelicals. And now you can understand why the Democrats are so big into advancing singlehood, are so willing to denigrate marriage. If the Democrats are willing to flood this country with illegal aliens, to pad their numbers for the Electoral College, they're just as capable of trying to undermine marital integrity in this country and advance alternate lifestyles because they see that's where their growth is in the numbers. 59% of unmarried women voted Democrat. The single biggest indicator these days of who votes Democrat is a college-educated single woman. So, of course, they're going to denigrate marriage, denigrate faith, and denigrate social stability. It has nothing to do with what's good for culture and what's good for society. It has everything to do with what's good for political power for the Democrats. So, parents, they're going to be bred out of existence. They're not having kids. They're not reproducing. They're getting sterilized. You parents, when you raise your children, when you hand them over to the government school because you're not homeschooling them or sending them to a Christian Christian classical school or a charter school, when you hand them over to the state to be educated, when they come home, you need to remind them faith is real and marriage is a good thing, because they're not going to get that in the schools that the Democrats are in charge of. It's a great question, and we're getting a lot of emails from people asking this question, and they can't. And here's why. The 11th Amendment to the Constitution, here's what it says. This is the plain text of the Constitution. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. In other words, citizens of one state are prohibited by the Constitution from suing another state in federal court. Now, so what do you say about when we fly to New York and we sue them there? Well, New York has a similar constitutional provision that you're not allowed to sue a state. You're not even allowed to sue the United States. You're saying, Erickson, well, people do it all the time. Yes, because the federal government and state governments have limited exceptions by which they'll allow themselves to be sued. And generally, it is for personal injury, not due to policy, but due to conduct. So, for example, you're in a wreck with a police car in a police chase. You can sue the state for the crashing in the state patrol. Or the post office is delivering mail and tears up your yard. You can sue the federal government for that. or someone violates your individual civil rights, they can sue that. But for public policy, and this is hard for some people to want to wrap their minds around because it's a very emotional issue, and I get that. But New York having sanctuary policy is a public policy choice of the state of New York. And you cannot sue a state for its public policy choices, even if those public policy choices cause you injury. That's the 11th Amendment and the state constitutions of the several states. So, no, they can't. And we're getting a lot of questions about the death penalty as well. They didn't seek the death penalty in the Jose Ibarra case, which means it's not an option. It was taken off the table by the prosecution, and that prosecution team has been thrown out of office now by the voters, but too late for this case. Now, I need to tell you about Eden Pure and its Thunderstorm. You can get 3 of them and save $200, and they're the all-new Thunderstorm. If you go to EdenPureDeals.com today and you put in Erick 3, you can get 3 Eden Pure Thunderstorms. In fact, EdenPureDeals.com is the website that you go to, if I can type, and you'll see when you load the site, you'll see host keyword, and you put in Erick 3, ERICK 3, the number 3, click submit. Your savings are loaded into your cart, and you see the all-new Thunderstorm OxyLeaf. It generates not just ozone to wipe out odors, but plasma to wipe out bacteria and viruses up to 99%, 99.9% of contaminants. And it also traps pollen and dust. You can get 3 of them, upstairs, downstairs, your basement, your travel bag, and it's small, packs a wallop, the Eden Pure Thunderstorm. You get 3 of them with the discount code ERICK3 at EdenPureDeals.com. You save $200. You get them for less than $200. EdenPureDeals.com, discount code ERICK3. So I got to play lawyer with you here for just a little bit. Welcome back. It's Erick Erickson here. I was a criminal legal defender. I didn't want to be. So I should set this up for you. I was a very bad criminal defense attorney. I never wanted to be a criminal defense attorney. But when I was practicing law, the county in which I practiced, you were not allowed to practice law unless for 5 years you served as an indigent criminal defense attorney. I can tell you, I learned a lot about humanity and empathy for people in bad situations by doing it. It was good for my character to do it, even if I didn't want to do it. It really was. But I understand the legal system here in Georgia where I practice law, and I didn't like criminal law. I never wanted to go to court. I actually worked for a district attorney for a while as an intern, and I loved the prosecution side. And I'll never forget when I was a law clerk. So I was applying for law clerk jobs, and at the time, the DA paid $5.25 an hour. And I got offered a clerkship at a law firm, and it was $5.75. And I knew the lawyer of the law firm, very nice man. And I went to him and I said, look, I got to be honest with you. You're 50 cents more an hour than the DA's office. But I think I want that experience. And he kind of pushed back in his chair. He says, wait a second. Our district attorney's paying $525 a week for law clerks? I said, no, $5.25 an hour. And he fell out laughing. And he says, we may not want to hire you if you're that stupid. It's $575 a week versus $5.25 an hour. I wound up going to the law firm. But I did criminal indigent defense for 5 years. And so here's the thing. I'm getting a lot of questions from people nationally, not just in Georgia, about why no death penalty for Jose Ibarra in Georgia. In every state, district attorneys are of the executive branch. And district attorneys are the ones who seek not just to punish, but also how to punish. It is the judges of the judicial branch who hear the evidence, weigh the facts, often with a jury, who then render a verdict and decide on the appropriate punishment based on the verdict. In this case, the district attorney at the time that this case happened, Deborah Gonzalez, was a Soros-backed progressive. And she handed the case over to outside counsel, but the outside counsel is still bound by the policies of the district attorney's office. And that district attorney was so progressive, she would not allow them to pursue the death penalty. It wasn't something that was going to happen in Athens, Clarke County. The judge in the case cannot impose the death penalty unless it's sought and asked for by the prosecution. That's the way the system works. You may not like it, but that's the way the system works. Now, this leads to the next question some people want. Deborah Gonzalez, the hyper-woke progressive district attorney who ran her office into the ground, literally like 17 assistant district attorneys quit the office. She was such a terrible manager. She lost her election to a guy who ran an independent campaign. He collected signatures and campaigned against her, not as a Republican, but as an independent, and he won. Democrats and Republicans came together in Clarke County, Georgia, and threw Deborah Gonzalez out of office. Rightfully so. She was a terrible DA. So that raises the next question. Why then, when the incoming DA came in, why didn't he change policies and immediately ask for the death penalty? Two things. One, he's not yet been sworn into office. He's not yet the district attorney. She is. And even if he were, the case had already begun in court. They had already decided not to do a jury trial. So you'd have to redo the entire trial, get a jury and all of that for it to work. It was an impossibility. But the bottom line is he's not the district attorney yet. The woke progressive DA is still the DA. And their policy was no death penalty, so Jose Ibarra will spend the rest of his life in prison. Now, this is a problem. It's one we can't do anything about. If the DA is not going to ask for the death penalty, the judge is not allowed to impose the death penalty. And you can't appeal and ask the Supreme Court of Georgia or the Court of Appeals in Georgia to impose a death penalty, because when you appeal, you don't wind up in a worse predicament. The problem, though, is that Jose Ibarra is a member of that Venezuelan gang. So now he's going to go into state prison in Georgia with ties to a very violent Venezuelan gang and begin to network with the populations of the prison. The state is going to have to be very, very careful about how it proceeds with his prison sentence. But he's going away for the rest of his life with no opportunity for parole in the state of Georgia. And that in and of itself is a good thing, that he's going to be off the streets for the rest of his life. He's not going to get to go back to Venezuela. He's not going to be deported. He's going to be put in prison. He was convicted of felony murder, malice murder, kidnapping with bodily injury, aggravated assault with intent to rape, aggravated battery, hindering a 911 call, and tampering with evidence. He was also found guilty of a peeping Tom charge. He waived his right to a jury. It's a horrible case. By the way, do not blame the special prosecutor for the setup of this case. The special prosecutor prosecuted it because the incompetent district attorney was at least smart enough to pass it off, hoping that by passing it off, she could show herself to be tough and win re-election. It didn't help. But the special prosecutor, her hands were kind of tied as well. It's just a sad case. What's worse is that it was so preventable. That's the thing that just makes me angry about the case and why so many of you are angry. Laken Riley should still be alive. She should be alive because the President of the United States of America should prioritize our national sovereignty by securing our border. And instead, Jose Ibarra came into this country illegally and was allowed in. He went to New York. New York didn't detain him. New York didn't do much anything. He was arrested in New York, let go, and made his way to Georgia, where his brother was. And he murdered Laken Riley. Now, I want you also to know that Athens, Clark County, Georgia, will deny it until they're blue in the face, but Athens, Clark County, Georgia has put in place sanctuary city policies. The local police are willing to tell you all about it. Local mayor and county commission there deny it till they're blue in the face. They've done everything possible to turn Clark County into a sanctuary county. It's a combined city-county government. When they tell you they're not a sanctuary city, you need to understand they're lying to cover themselves. They are. So Jose Ibarra went from one illegal immigrant-friendly place to another and wound up murdering a law-abiding citizen of the United States of America in the state of Georgia, Laken Riley. He should have never been here. And he'll be in jail for the rest of his life. And she's not alone in this. She's not the only victim of an illegal alien in the United States who came here because of the Biden policies. And it's unfair. And to the extent presidents affect you on a daily basis, this is it. Presidents and Congress, they don't really affect you on a regular daily basis. They don't. But things like this do affect you from the federal level. The weakness on border policy, among other things, the terrible weakness on border policy that this administration has put into place. And we've got just over 2 months left before it all goes away. On January 20th, today is November 20th. In 2 months, Donald Trump will take the oath of office and return to the presidency and bring hell with him for illegal aliens who are criminal agents in this country. Yeah, I had an exchange with Jake Tapper this morning. I don't think he'll mind me saying this. I'm sure he won't. Jake and I have a great relationship, known him for a long time. And he and Scott Jennings, I pledged you yesterday the exchange that he and Scott Jennings had about migrant workers in this country. And yes, Jake's right. The data shows in this country the majority of the people who are picking the crops are illegal aliens. In fact, the data suggests strongly that many of the people who come into this country legally on a temporary agriculture worker visa actually are not here legally and have forged documents. That's what the data suggests. But I'll tell you, and the reason he reached out to me is a Twitter thread I put up yesterday about his and Scott Jennings' exchange. I've had a lot of farmers call me call the show and email me. I've had them from Oklahoma. I've had them from Illinois. I've had them from Ohio. I've had them from Florida and Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. I've had a lot of farmers reach out. There's one other state in there. And all of them said to a person that it is a talking point and a data point that the majority of ag workers in the fields in this country are illegal, and they don't believe it. That in their fields and in their farms, they actually use the temporary worker program, and they are vetted. In fact, they have inspectors who come to their farms and inspect to make sure that they're not using illegal aliens. They said certainly in California and places like that they are, because the states don't inspect. And one of the farmers from just outside of Dayton, Ohio, sent me a link to a piece, said the Biden administration last year reduced the number of farm inspections from over 5,000 a year to less than 900 a year. Essentially, the Biden administration wanted hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil as the policy. They did not want to inspect a farm to see if there are illegals working. They wanted the illegals to work. And the Democrats and much of the media are convinced that without the illegal aliens, the farm industry will collapse. And all of these farmers who reached out to me from all these states says that is not true at all. It is not true at all. In fact, The flood of illegal immigrants has disincentivized a temporary program in this country, and that temporary program could be revitalized if we got rid of the illegal aliens. It would actually help us, and people would be documented. And, that is the punchline to all of this for me, is how well documented all these people are who the media insists must be called undocumented immigrants instead of illegal immigrants. We know very well how many of them are here and where they're working. At least we claim to. But these farmers, all of them said they totally support mass deportations because, one, they're going to go after the criminals first. Two, then they're going to find the missing children. And then three, they're not coming for the people who pick the crops. And to the extent they are, there's an existing program all these people can apply for and come back. It's not going to be a burden. And yet the media talking point is going to be this massive burden. I'll believe it when I see it. What I see right now is that there is a dead girl in Athens, Georgia, because this administration chose not to secure the border, because they chose to do backdoor in-runs around existing American law, and they didn't respect the American law that we had or the border of the United States, and more than one person has been killed because of those policies, and their blood is on Joe Biden's hands. But he doesn't even know it. He's too mentally incompetent to know. Now, before I get out of here, I need to tell you, if you're a business and you're starting a business and you're looking for a bank, can I recommend my bank, Old Glory Bank? I'm an investor in the bank. I want you to know it. My use of Old Glory Bank as a customer pre-exists them being an advertiser. In fact, I lobbied for them to advertise on my show. They're chartered in Oklahoma, but they're a nationwide bank. They do online checking and savings for individuals and businesses, custodial accounts for your kids. They have great interest rates. They've got a great app. I'm a big believer in Old Glory Bank. They're a bank started by conservatives who saw the banking trends happen around the country, where progressives buy into banks and then start using the leverage of the bank to say to the gun store, we're sorry, we can't do business with you anymore because you sell guns. Or to tell the person who uses their debit card to buy a gun, we're sorry, you can't buy that gun with your debit card. And Old Glory Bank come up and say, you know what, we're going to be conservative, by conservatives, for conservatives. We're going to support the Second Amendment. We're going to support businesses. And even though we're online banking, we're going to do unique services for businesses where we'll be able to help them with loans. We'll send people to them. We'll get to know the business. We'll build a relationship, and they do it. And I've sent multiple businesses to them. I've got accounts with them. I began investing in the bank as well. I believe in them, and you will too. OldGloryBank.com. You can get your entire account set up online today at OldGloryBank.com. OldGloryBank.com. You can get an account for your kids. You can get no-fee checking, no-fee savings. That's what I have. They got great interest rates. You can build a relationship with them, do mortgages. You can do car loans. You can do business loans. OldGloryBank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply.